Okay, so the other day I was chatting with my friend and we got on the topic of shipping in Fire Emblem. See, there was this post on Twitter where someone claimed that Ike and Soren have no romantic chemistry, which seemed really silly to us because we felt Ike and Soren have great chemistry. And this conversation eventually led to the question that inspired the musings that became this video. What is Ike's sexuality anyway? Welcome to the second episode of Quick Character Analysis, where I kind of use my brain and mostly just walk you through my thought process on someone. See, before I really started thinking about it, my initial answer was, canonically he's bisexual, but let's be honest, dude's just gay. But then I had to wonder, what evidence even is there to corroborate Ike's sexuality? Well, that's what I'll be rambling about for a bit. Ike was pretty much designed to stand out from the rest of the franchise's main lords, and a large part of this was his humble origins. He was the first lord in the franchise to have no noble lineage at all, and he only becomes a lord in story after being raised to the station by Elincia. And even then, it's only really a formality, as Ike himself has zero interest in actually being a noble, and absolutely no tolerance for the pompous douchebaggery that most of the nobility encounters seems to revel in. His only real interests lie in fighting, keeping the Grail mercenaries going, taking care of his friends and family, and eating. He's a very down-to-earth character, more than basically any other lord in the series before him. Ike also stands out by seemingly having no romantic attachments. He's the only lord with no paired ending, and at the end of the Radiance games he just sets out on a journey to parts unknown, having spent the games solely focused on saving the world and making sure his loved ones survive. Except he kind of does have paired endings, as depending on your support choices, either Soren or Ranulf are implied to have travelled with him, which also implies a romantic ending because that's just how Fire Emblem pairings work sometimes. Even between straight couples, there are a lot of paired endings where their lives together are more implicit than not, and given that Ike either displays discomfort, ignorance, or straight up avoidance anytime a woman flirts with him, it's pretty safe to say he's not all that interested in girls. Ike is the single bluntest man in the history of Tellius. If he was interested in a woman, everyone would fucking know. See, this is what we call implicit representation, where a character's LGBT status is, for whatever reason, never outright stated, but is communicated to the player through their actions and story details. And the reason it's not outright stated here is because the Tellius games came out in the 2000s, and that generally wasn't a time where open and honest portrayals of LGBT relationships were considered welcome in gaming. Even Kanji from Persona 4, the character that a lot of people have pointed to as a good example of gay rep in gaming, still ended up skirting around the topic quite a bit. So it's not a big surprise Ike being gay was left to the background details. Honestly, Ike's sexuality would be a pretty open and shut case if it weren't for the lagoos in the room. You know, Priam. Priam is the sole sticking point in the Ike is gay discussion by virtue of the fact that he's apparently Ike's descendant, implying Ike performed the happy horizontal hula with a woman at least once in his life. I've seen discourse surrounding the legitimacy of Priam's claim to his ancestry, and I gotta be honest, I kind of have mixed feelings on it, so let's just go over some of the arguments real quick. 1. Priam has Ragnar, so that makes him Ike's descendant. This point doesn't really hold water because Ragnar has a history of being used by people other than Ike, as Altina was the original wielder and the Black Knight threw it to Grail, implying that he would have been able to as well. The thing about PRF weapons is that most of them aren't magical choosy swords like the Falchion or the Manikati. They're only mechanically unit locked to make them feel more special to their respective lord, and there's usually no narrative reason given why most of them can't be used by literally anyone else. Also, by the time of Awakening, Ragnar's blessing has become so weakened that anyone with sword proficiency can wield it. 2. Ike doesn't explicitly say he's into guys, so he's not. Okay, so this doesn't hold up for multiple reasons, several of which I went over earlier, but this also doesn't prove he's straight. Plenty of characters all across media don't outright state their sexual preferences or show any inclination towards banging anyone of any gender, and that doesn't prove anything either, so this doesn't mean Ike isn't into men. 3. Priam could be descended from Mist instead of Ike. Okay, this is actually where I'm going to disappoint some of you because I wholeheartedly disagree with this statement and it all comes down to hair color. Priam has blue hair and Mist has brown hair, and because of how hair colors are passed down in the series, especially in the games that have child units like Awakening, that precludes Mist from being Priam's progenitor. While in real life you could always break out the Punnett square to determine the chances of someone inheriting the hair color of a specific parent or grandparent or whatever, the mechanics of Fire Emblem games always have it so a child inherits the color of one parent, and then their children inherit either their or their spouse's hair color. Ike got Elena's hair and Mist got Grail's, and neither of Mist's potential partners have blue hair, so that means Priam would need to get his blue from Ike. I mean, the odds of the exact same hair color being passed down each time are so ridiculously small that it's funny to even consider it, but they're actually does exist a chance with Ike, unlike with his sister. And before someone points out that Ike's hair is a different shade of blue, Awakening has a more muted color palette overall, and Priam's hair does align with how Ike's would look in this game, and the game is explicitly telling you to associate them with each other, so that's one point in favor of Priam actually being Ike's descendant. Here's the thing though, all of this only matters if you actually consider Priam to matter in the argument, and I just don't. Yeah, this is where we get to the big twist of the video. I don't consider Priam's presence actually important to the argument, and I have both a Watsonian and Doyleist reason for it. The Doyleist reason is simple. Priam is just a fun fanservice DLC character they threw in because they thought Awakening was going to be the last Fire Emblem game and they wanted to have fun with it. Priam's entire character is just a parody of Ike, with each of his traits being taken from Ike and jacked up to the extreme, right down to his outrageous love of meat and his ridiculous love of training. He's just supposed to be a fun character, which he very much is. The Watsonian explanation is a little bit more complicated, but to put it bluntly, there's nothing that says he's descended from our Ike. Awakening introduced a lot of timeline fuckery and a sort of many worlds approach that the series has kept using ever since. And the games even gave us proof that alternate versions exist in the form of letting you recruit Yen Fei, who is explicitly an alternate world version of the one we fought and killed. Priam is a spot pass character who came to this world via the gates and then fucks off back to another world when it's over. So the odds of him being the descendant of the same Ike we played in the Tellius games are honestly kind of slim to none. And even if he actually is, that doesn't mean Ike doesn't like men, it just means he's bisexual. All Priam's relationship would prove is that Ike slept with a woman once, which doesn't disprove his attraction to men and can only be used as an argument against that by biphobic assholes. So yeah, in my grandiose and objectively correct deductions, Ike favours men and might be bisexual. And I'm perfectly fine with either because we always need more narratively reinforced bisexual rep in gaming. Anyway, I've been writing real slow and thanks for watching.